It's time for a Vinland Saga video. The time has come. This day was inevitable. Let's go. Come on. Let's do this. We're doing this. Let's go. For years, Vinland Saga has been my favorite manga. I've just held it up there as number one because it sits nicely in that spot for hitting all my personal preferences in a story. Likeable characters, hateable characters, depth, thought-provoking content, action, emotional investment, stakes, consequences, beautiful art, and world building. Very in-depth world building. And more action. I stumbled upon Vinland Saga the anime as it was releasing back in the peak season that was summer 2019. And off the bat, the action is what drew me in. However, what really garnered my admiration for the story was the deep sense of confidence the show just radiated so effortlessly. The pacing just felt so calming and so natural. You could just tell with every episode that the show is basically holding up a big sign saying, "We know what we're doing, don't rush us." Naturally, watching 24 minutes of this weekly can become very painful, leading some people to call the show slow or boring. And to those people I would say, it's okay that you don't have enough brain cells to take in more than a few lights and colors flashing on the screen between explosions. It's not your fault. Shh. Here. It's okay. Go watch another episode of Kill la Kill or something, you simple-minded baby. I still remember to this day the moment when Askeladd picked up his sword against King Sven. There I was at night, staring at my screen as Askeladd carved through a giant wave of soldiers. The king's freshly removed head lying on the ground, jaw literally on the floor. I remember thinking, is Askeladd going to die? This is the last episode, it can't end like this. Why is this happening? Who let this happen? Why do I feel bad for Askeladd? He killed Thorfinn's dad, and many other people. He killed Canut's dad, and... oh. That was the prologue. So this is what I mean when I say that Makoto Yukimura and all the people involved in the Vinland Saga story knows what they're doing. Don't rush them. I can list very few other stories that have the confidence, the sheer balls, the absolute enormous nutsack energy to attempt storytelling at this pace, following multiple characters across varying stories for such long periods of their lives. The entire story of My Hero Academia, that's right, all 6 seasons, plus the manga which is still ongoing to this day, all of that takes place in the first academic year of Midoriya joining UA High School. Take for another example your average studio trigger animation. Pumping and fast-paced, they're usually amazing, but can sometimes fly below the radar, lasting maybe 3 to 4 days max in the news cycle of hype. Why is that? For my third example, I want to circle back to the summer of 2019 that I mentioned earlier. Demon Slayer, Fire Force, Dr. Stone, The Promised Neverland, Love is War, Dororo, Beastars, Shield Hero, The Downfall of Seven Deadly Sins. So many shows were breaking onto the scene for the first time, with the aim of becoming more than the average 24-episode weekly show that gets forgotten. At the time of release, we didn't know which show was going to be the next big hit, and which show was going to be forgotten in the next year or so. Obviously, looking back now, we know which ones are doing incredibly well and which ones aren't doing incredibly well. But regardless, the first goal of each of those shows, once that first episode dropped, was to establish a fan base, a loyal following. They all knew that where the fans go, the money follows, and in fear of losing this popularity with the viewers, the shows will often hit pacing speeds that don't match the original source material, and sacrifice on storytelling the mangaka carefully thought out during the serialization and release of what they were trying to write. With manga, you'll often find the first and last chapters of the story to have this issue, and this is because it is very difficult to pace a story you're trying to establish, whilst also meeting the needs your printing company is pushing onto you to match release timing. Whether it be Shonen Jump or any other serialization, Hopping in and out of the cycle can be very difficult when you have to balance story and appealing to who you work for, and appealing to your loyal fans. It takes a lot of confidence to not worry about these pressures in the favor of your story. Confidence that Vinland Saga has. I'm not saying Vinland Saga is not balanced, don't get me wrong. They value the story over appealing to fans, and there's still a loyal fan base waiting for every new episode and every new chapter. The story just became that good, and it's now just a case of if you know, you know. You know?
Oh, never heard of him.
Yeah, I know. You wouldn't have. You gotta be in the know to know, you know?
No.
And that's why you've never heard of them.
What I'm getting at is that all the shows I've mentioned since have tried their hardest to stay stuck in circulation and constantly have people talking about them through putting out more content such as second seasons or other related materials, some of which have come to the detriment of the series. And I know personally that because of this, I can greatly respect a show that comes in, knows what it wants to do, does it, and then leaves. 4 years ago, the Vinland Saga anime disappeared off the face of the earth, despite how gripping the story and the season of adaptation were. It is now 2023 and Vinland Saga is back to make a serious impact. This sounds a lot like another anime that I can vaguely remember. Honestly, it's just been so long, and I'm so happy to finally see Thorfinn murder Vikings and be an edgy teenage protagonist again. Wait a second. Who is this? This isn't Thorfinn. This isn't Thorfinn either. Neither of these are my Thorfinn. Where's the rage? Where's the violence? Where's the signs of a true Nordic warrior? This is just a weak and empty person. Someone like this could never survive a day on the battlefield of 1013 Scandinavia. Honestly, I'm getting heavy deja vu right now. I don't know what that's about. I'm definitely seeing similarities with someone else. Is this just me? I can't quite put my finger on it. Canute is Thorfinn. Thorfinn is Canute. Part of my admiration for this story is how, with so many varying characters, the author still had space for a yin and yang relationship as strikingly powerful as this one. You know when two separate pendulums are swinging back and forth, but they're a distance just frustratingly far enough away that they'll never actually touch one another. Thorfinn and Canute's character arcs develop and grow in this way. Just arm's length apart. One born from royalty, and another born and raised in the cold plains of Iceland. They begin at complete opposite sides of the world, not literally, but from a literary standpoint.
おう、少し剣があるが良い顔だ。
軍団長、それは私の部下です。クヌート王子殿下はそちらにおわします。
目に力がない。本当に時代のイングランドを滑るものか？
何？貴様、失礼であろう。
Let's break down their most important plot points. Both characters embark on a journey that takes them away from home. Both characters have their fathers brutally murdered by Askeladd, even father figures like Ragnar. Both of their fathers are highly regarded as either literal king of England or Troll of Yom, the strongest Viking alive. The deaths of their fathers is what leads them to a place of resolve on what they will do next. If we look at their respective plots as linear, the point at which the two meet each other for the first time can be seen as a major crossroads for both of them going forwards. After they've met, the death of Ragnar leads Canute down a path of blood. The Catholic priest, whose name I can't remember right now, gives Canute a moving speech on love, and the lack of it in the world that they live in. This goads Canute towards a newfound resolve, which develops him from a timid and innocent boy into someone who sees themselves in the perfect position to do something about his circumstances, and change his world for the better. Thorkel is the strongest character in the entire story physically, but when he sees Canute, he acknowledges that this is a greater strength that Canute possesses, and agrees to follow him in awe of what he will become. Once this has happened, Canute's posse ends up at the front door of King Sven's throne room, and eventually this leads to the death of Canute's evil father, King Sven. Something's not right here. This sounds like something a protagonist would go through. Canute is not the protagonist. We didn't even meet him until episode 11. Thorfinn's the protagonist. Where is Thorfinn? He's right here. He's always there, but it's not until Askeladd is killed in a public display by Canute that he is truly cut out of the big picture. Looking back, I could definitely see a progression of the story, where Thorfinn gets revenge for his father by killing Askeladd in front of everyone. As an ally to Canute, he would be heralded as Canute's new right-hand man, replacing Askeladd, and together with Thorkel, these three would conquer England and Scandinavia, and eventually bring relative peace to the land, thus achieving their main goal, peace. These two have the same goal, and yet their paths are so vice versa that it hurts. I guess the author simply didn't see it panning out this way. Canute instead steals Thorfinn's entire reason for living away from him, and sells him off as a slave right after. The chessboard has been shifted. Okay, so falling deep into Season 2 and manga spoilers territory now, I'd like to talk about how these two now switch places, and their paths diverge in opposite directions. The crossroads has been passed, and now the two have become young men. I love how Thorfinn's character is in this story, and how he struggles with the lives he's taken. The imagery of the dead clinging to him as he carries them with him, and continues to fight his battle towards establishing peace. It's some of my favorite stuff in fiction, and I just can't wait to see his dream sequences animated. Thorfinn, after some reflection, relinquishes his will to raise a sword against another person, and cuts off all violence. He decides to fight without weapons, or fists, just like his father did before him. The pure strength in this story comes from how this task is much greater than establishing peace through bloodshed. Thorfinn realizes that he must take up what his father left for him and find Vinland, a place without war, where crops grow bountifully in the sun and rain. There, Thorfinn has to establish a true kind of peace, not a facade built on corpses and lies. If he really has no If Thorfinn really has no enemies, like Thor says that he does, then he has no option but to find the strength to fight for peace without violence. The sign of a true warrior. That's why he's the main character.
That's why he's the MVP! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Canute cannot do this. Even if he wanted to, which he doesn't. He sees no point in trying to save everyone around him and give out his help to those who are violent. He sees doing this as weak and pitiful, and thus he looks down on Thorfinn even more than any common soldier, which we established in Season 1. Canute despises soldiers. Now Canute has grown into a person that uses petty tricks and any means possible to reach his goals of peace, on a grander scale. For this, I can kind of respect him, the same way I respect Lelouch from Code Geass. If you don't understand what I mean by that, it means you haven't seen the end of Code Geass, so go watch that. If you know what I'm talking about because you've seen the end of Code Geass, leave a comment, I don't know, something like the letter E, so I know who out there is really cultured, and you may want to consider subscribing. I really admire Thorfinn. I read the situations that he's put in over the chapters, and I think I could simply never pull off anything like this. Not because it's fiction, the situations he's in are very real, but he's just demonstrated strength that you can really look up to. Thorfinn and Canute mirror each other in a way that I love to see unfold from an audience perspective. Having read all the chapters of Vinland Saga so far during the break between Season 1 and Season 2, I can say that the story continues to snowball and build outwards. Many people looked at the final teaser scene at the end of Season 1 in confusion, but now I can look forwards in glee, as we get to meet all of the characters alongside Thorfinn and his quest towards Vinland and becoming a true warrior. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks so much if you got this far into the video. There's so much yet to come in the following seasons of the Vinland Saga story that I can't wait to see animated. The internet's reaction to this story will be great, and more than anything, I'm just glad the show has a solid fan base to interact with. Subscribe. Yes, you, subscribe. I know you want to. Love. Bye.